And welcome back. Now we welcome Diana Kirkova, and she will say her name if I pronounced something wrong. She is a SAFe program consultant, trainer, Agile Enterprise Transformation Coach, and consultant. She has wealthy experience in both software development, strategy and management consulting, as well as IT product management. Besides huge work experience, she has great education behind her: computer science, software technologies, business administration, work and organizational philosophy, and probably I forgot something. Her bio amazed me, and I'm sure that she will amaze us all with her topic. We don't do risk management. We are all optimists at heart. She also has a lovely puppy. She showed the puppy to me just moments ago. So welcome, Diana.
Thank you so much for the invitation, and thank you so much for the warm presentation and introduction. You just forgot the PhD, but don't worry about that. I can send you a PhD.
I said that I probably forgot something.
Today, did you? Okay. So today we are here to talk about this hot topic about the risk management. I feel sorry that I cannot see you in person because usually it's more valuable if we have a session that I can see you, you can see me, and we can interact. But unfortunately, due to the latest situation with the health situation, we cannot see each other. But let's hope for the next year or in 2 years we can meet somewhere and discuss more topics, not only this one. So what I want to talk today with you is exactly this risk management and how we do it in Agile. Because before, if you remember, I think that you guys probably are close to me here in Bulgaria. I'm from Bulgaria. Agile was not so popular before 5, 6, 7 years, and before 10 years. It was just barely few companies hearing about that, little by little having Scrum teams or Kanban teams, but it was not popular at all. And we were using for managing projects, we were using the PM book. So there, if you remember, there is a huge chapter for the risk management. But then when we decided to go in this Agile world, there is no chapter specifically for the risk management. It's something that it is mentioned, and it is present in each meeting, in each event. We will discuss this in the next half an hour together. But there are no specific guidelines, there are no specific chapters to how to manage this risk. That's why it's a really interesting topic, and I keep discussing it with different people in the different countries, and we'll keep thinking together how we can improve in this area. So I mentioned the old way of managing projects, because at that time we were talking only about projects, but now we are trying to talk more about products. So from project management to product management, more from this perspective. But the old way was to have first this requirements gathering time. Then we were analyzing what are the requirements from our customer facing people or from the customers directly. Then we were designing the project. Then we were implementing the project, and then we were testing the project and giving it to the customers. So now it is not exactly like that in the Agile world. You know that we are working in small iterations, and those iterations they have 4 stages. They have iteration planning, iteration execution, iteration review, iteration retrospective. So I'm not specifying here, is it a sprint or what is it an iteration? You could use different frameworks under the Agile umbrella. But we have these smaller iterations, which are usually not longer than 2, 3, maximum 4 weeks to do all of the steps and circle around and gather the feedback after that. So during these small circles, we also are managing the risk all the time, and we will be talking about that in the next slides. Because compared to these small circles that we are doing at the moment, before we were talking about the risk mainly in the analyzing step and mainly in the design step. Not anymore in the implementation and in the testing step, but just in the beginning of the project. Of course, people, they were having risk charts, risk tables with different statuses, and they were managing, but mainly it was done in the beginning of the cycle, not during the whole steps of the cycle. Just a small reminder why we go from this waterfall world to the agile world. I know that if you're here, you're not just a newborn in the agile world, but probably you're living it, and you know who is Henrik Nieberg. So this guy, he is promoting the agile thinking, agile way of working, because he doesn't want to have the old way of working where we as customers are ordering the car, and then in 2 years we have the car and we give money to the producer and we have our value, we start using the car. He's promoting that little by little, probably we will be able to make our customers happy earlier than the end of the full implementation. So here he's talking how we first need to find the minimum viable product, what is the minimum to build, then what is the next step, what is the next step, what is the next step. So here on the picture, you can see that in this example, the requirement is that the person would like to be able to move through point A to point B. So from our perspective, we need to think, is it the car that this customer needs, or he just needs to be able to move from point A to point B? So then we can start thinking that maybe we should not provide the car in 2 years, but we can provide something in the first month or in the second month. So in the first month, maybe we can provide the skate, which will not make the customer very happy, because probably he cannot skate, he's not a teenager, but still we are providing something that the customer could use to move himself from one point to another point. Then after each iteration, we are adding more functionalities to the product that we are building. And for example, here we are putting a stick that's where the customer could put the hands so they're not falling down when they're skating. Because they're not all of them, they're not young. So the customer is so happy in the next iteration, in the next month. But in the third iteration, probably we can improve we can improve and provide a bicycle to the customer. So something which is more secured, which could make the customer to move to a further direction, and the customer then immediately becomes happy, and he or she could have the value that the customer was looking from the beginning of the requirements, of the beginning of the process. So little by little, he's talking how we can improve our process, and by improving this process, we're mitigating the risk in smaller pieces. So before showing me the slide of the risk, and just give me a second to remove this where I can see myself. So how does Agile address risk? Probably, if you see this slide, you will say, yeah, it is easy, transparency, expose everything we are doing so we can see risk early. Yeah, transparency is one of the pillars. It is easy to be done. Or collaborative planning. It will be good if we can do our planning together with the multiple teams so we can see where are the risks, where are the critical paths. Or yes, it will be nice if we involve the customer to mitigate customer risk by involving them through the life cycle. So we can have this often meetings with the customers to receive some feedback, maybe to demonstrate them what is the current status of what is the current development of the product, and so we could get some feedback from the customer. So those are 3 really easy steps that we could do to introduce transparency, collaborative planning, and customer involvement. So in Scrum, we are not talking so much about this collaborative planning, because then we are focusing more on the Scrum teams, how they work, what are their ceremonies, what are their events. But the reality is that we have multiple Scrum teams, multiple Kanban teams. We have many teams that they need to work together. So we need to think also how to mitigate this risk that could appear during the planning if they have dependencies between the teams. And this is really often in my working experience that it's a really rare occasion when the teams are really have no independencies, everything is flowers and good weather, and it's just impossible to have this type of risk. But we need to think from the perspective when we have multiple teams, when they have dependencies between them. So few more words about the risk. Again, if we compare how was the risk mitigated, how was the risk topic discussed during the waterfall frameworks, or before the Agile comes so much into our lives, was that on the left picture, you can see that we have huge risk because we are not delivering anything to the customer before the end date of the project. While in Agile, on the right side of the picture, you can see that by delivering little by little small pieces to the customer, we are mitigating the risk and we are having small risks. So we have these small risks because imagine that, for example, I'm developing something 2 years and we need new servers. There will be a big bang on 5th of November. We will deploy everything on production. But the end on 5th of November, some things doesn't go well and we're missing our deadline. So we are missing the whole project. Everything goes really wrong on this specific date. So by mitigating, by deploying little by little small steps of the code to production, or providing functionalities to the customer one by one that they can start using, they can start having their business value, it is mitigating the risk itself. So we are going from big risk to small risks, little by little, after each iteration. So, of course, Agile doesn't say that Agile world is risk-free. As you can see, it is not risk-free, but it is just small portions of risk with the time. So that's why we need to think how to handle these risks and if we can handle them. So a risk is an uncertainty event that will impact your chosen path, and should it be released. So when you find something that you could say that it is a risk, there are four steps that you need to go through and see how to handle this risk. So first, they identifying a risk, then assess a risk, they respond to a risk, and reviewing the risk at the end. So we need all the time to monitor the risks if they are happening, if they're the resolution, the handling procedure that we can decide for them it is working, or we need to rethink how to proceed with it. Here, the next slides, we have little description and some examples how we can detect and have a resolution for the specific risk. So how we can identify a risk in which meetings, for example, in Scrum. And you can see on the left side on the screen, I have listed some spots, some events where you can spotlight the risk itself. Unfortunately, it is not a live session, and if we were together, I wouldn't give you this left side of the screen, and by a discussion, we will find them. But here you can see them. So, for example, during the requirements workshop, when you're gathering some requirements with the customer-facing people or directly with customers, with stakeholders, you can spotlight some risks. Another session is the planning poker session. During the planning, when you're or during the refinement, when you're planning, when you're playing the planning poker, having different votes of the different team members, we should show you that you have a risk that people do not understand what is the functionality, or the team members will tell you what kind of risks they also see. So during the planning poker, you can also spotlight different risks, which means respectively, this is during the sprint planning or this is during the refinement meeting. I mentioned several times Scrum, Scrum, Scrum. I know it is not only Scrum in the different organizations. For example, in my case, in my organization, we have Scrum and Kanban for the teams, and then we are scaling with SAFe framework. But for example, the Kanban teams, they're adopting good practices from the Scrum exactly to mitigate the risk. So they're also having a daily stand-up. It's not daily Scrum for them, but it is a daily in the Kanban teams to mitigate a little bit the risk, to see what is the plan for the next day, so they do not have risks of missing something. Or a sprint review. It is important to make sure that all of the important stakeholders are invited on the sprint review, and to demonstrate what is the progress of the team against some topics, and to gather the feedback. So you have this small gap of the time when you do not have any feedback from the stakeholders. If you imagine that the sprint is 2 or 3 weeks, every 3 weeks we're doing these sprint reviews. So we do not miss feedback from the stakeholders for too long. It is just a few weeks. And of course, during the retrospective, you can also spotlight some risks. The team, this is, the only place where the team could really freely speak between them to discuss and decide what next could be improved. So they can also state some risks. Those slides, by the way, I will send them to you later, so you will have all those lists. So don't worry, no need to have any screenshots or take too much notes. You will have the slides. So the next step is analyzing the risk. It's okay, we will find some risks, but then how we will analyze them? Some of the companies, they're using this categorization, PESTLE, which means that they categorize the different risks between political, environmental, social, technological, legal, economical. I don't know how much is your experience of having this different type of risks, but for example, in my case, we are having more technology risks and legal risks. So some of the people are using different type of categorizations. But the most important is to have some techniques in mind to see what you will do with those risks. So in few slides, I would like to show you this risk board, probabilities and impact. It is one technique that I'm using really often to decide how we proceed with some of the risks. And I strongly recommend you. It's easy to facilitate, but has very good results. You can also know some techniques like risk burn down chart that we can use, and it is also kindly provided from Atlassian in Jira. We have it, and we can just analyze it to understand what risk we have in the team. We will go back to the technique just in few slides, but to proceed, so first we identify the risk, then we analyze it, and then we prioritize it. It is really important to prioritize the risk and create an action plan for the most important risks. Because sometimes we see that we have a huge list of risks, like 20 risks, but some of them might not happen, or some of them are just not so important as the ones on the top. So we need to make sure that we have the right priority for the risks, and for the most important, we have a decision how to proceed, if they already appeared or if they will appear in the future eventually. And continuous monitoring, I mentioned in the beginning, it is really important also to monitor it, if what's going on with this risk, if we need to, again, analyze it if you need to reprioritize something, but the continuous monitoring of the risk is really important. So, to conclude, in predictive projects, that is often done during the project setup and updated on an ongoing basis during the entire project lifecycle. This means that what I showed you in the waterfall project, how in the beginning, eventually we are discussing more in details the risks, and then we update them on an ongoing basis, but we are not focusing so much on them. We are focusing too much in the beginning, but little by little after that. While in the agile projects, these steps are performed at least once per each iteration and updated during the development cycle. So we are monitoring the risks in each iteration, and the iterations are really short a period of time. They're not usually more than 1 month. So what are the Scrum events? And that we can discuss the risks. As I said in the beginning, it is really probably easy topic. Yes, we are discussing risk all the time, but do we realize that we're doing that on this meeting? For example, the daily Scrum, the daily stand-up. The team manages the risks in terms of reaching the sprint goal and other items that are to be delivered. So what does it mean? It means that we are discussing every 20 hours if we are seeing a risk for the next day or for the sprint, for the iteration itself. And if we are still working, we are still aiming to achieve our sprint goal. So, and every 24 hours, we're discussing what is the risk. On the sprint planning, we create a forecast, sprint backlog, and a sprint goal. And this forecast is all about the uncertainty and the risk. So when creating the sprint backlog and sizing the product backlog items, you're evaluating risk as part of the discussion. So when we mentioned, when we are giving estimations or when we are doing the refinements, we're discussing from the perspective of, do we have a risk? What is the risk? How we can mitigate it? What we can do about this risk? It is the sprint planning also meeting that we are spending some time to discuss that. On the backlog refinement, I mentioned it. It is really included in a discussion. Which element is risky? What we need to do? Should we contact someone else? How we can mitigate the risk in advance? I mentioned before that sometimes we need to have this collaborative planning event, because if we have a lot of dependencies between the different teams, they need to plan together to see if they have some risk because of those dependencies between them. So can we negotiate this in advance? Can we mitigate it in advance? And then we should not forget to monitor it. This, and nothing should be, we should not leave everything for the planning event. During the refinement meetings, we should be able to answer as much as possible questions, so we can mitigate the uncertainty this way as well. On the sprint review, I also mentioned that this is an occasion to discuss business and technology risks. We invite our stakeholders and we can debate with them. So we are constantly getting this feedback. We are constantly in a connection with the business, and we are constantly in connection with people that could help us to improve our backlog and to minimize the risk that we can have. On the retro, I also mentioned it is we can improve the risks in terms of our own process in the team, for example, or for the people, or for the technology, or the definition of done. I have one slide at the end. I'm not sure that we will have enough time to see it, but it is very important to have discussions regarding the definition of done, because we have a lot of risk there. If we are working with a lot of teams, they need to have the same understanding. What is the definition of ready? How the tickets, how the user stories, they need to look like in order to be ready for the sprint planning. Or what is the definition of done for the team, and what is the definition of done for the release, for example? Because in some of the companies, sometimes the development is detached from the release process. So if we have this detachment, we need to understand what is the definition of done for the team, for the iteration, and what is the definition of done for the release, to have this mutual understanding and mitigate the risk that could occur because of that. And the sprint itself, I was mentioning, eventually the sprint probably is 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, depending of the company, depending of some internal decisions. But we can mitigate the risk if we do not extend the length of the sprint to too long. So we are not saying that it's recommended to have an iteration or sprint for 6 weeks or a month and a half, because it is just too much period of time where you have this disconnection from your stakeholders, from the feedback that you're waiting to improve the backlog for the next iteration. That's why we try to balance with sprint lengths of 2 or 3 weeks maximum, just to make sure that we are doing the most important thing for the business, for the customer, on time. So more tools and techniques for that. The early feedback, really important. We should not forget it. Joint business and IT teams. So this is something that we're talking about in my company lately, that the idea is to have one team. So we should find a way together to work, the business people to work together with the IT teams. It is difficult sometimes because the IT teams, they are used to have some requirements in the backlog, and then, okay, they refine them a little bit, they do it, and they're not interacting too much with the business people. But if we join them together, we will mitigate the risk of doing the wrong stuff, and we will get more business value for everyone. In terms of technical risks, we observe, I share you from my perspective, from my latest experience, we observe that pair programming mitigates the technical risks sometimes and quality risks, because when you have newcomers or where you have people that need to speed up with specific technology, pair programming help them to deliver quality code, and to lose less time if you leave just the newcomer for 2 months to struggle with the code by themselves. And it is also mitigating this quality and technical risks that we can have, internal risks. So I mentioned there is burn down chart. In the slide, you can also click on the link and it will lead you to an article that you can read more. But I think that this is something that we discuss quite often. So no need to spend some time on that at the moment. But another techniques, the risk probability and impact matrix that I wanted to show you is on the next slide. So imagine that you have a session to list all of the risks that you can see for the next iteration or for the next few iterations if you are doing a high-level planning and prioritization session. And you can draw this graph with probabilities and impact. So you could ask all of the people in the meeting to put on a sticky note the risk that they think that could occur, or they already see that you have this risk for the next 3 months, for example. And you can ask them to put the sticky where they think it will suit the best. So for example, look, this green ticket here. So the probability to happen is high, but the impact, if you go horizontal, the impact is not so much. Or the yellow ticket here on the right side. So the probability is really low. Probably this will not happen, but if it happens, the impact will be huge on us. So this way, explaining the people where to put the sticky notes, you can create this graph with a lot of sticky notes, and then you circle the sticky notes on the top right corner, because those are the ones that are the most important, and you need to discuss them. So if you remember, I told you it is really important to prioritize the risks and discuss the most important. So the most important in this case are the ones which are with higher probability. They will happen for sure, and they have big impact. So the top right corner, you can see it is circled. Those risks, they need to be addressed and decided how to respond. So this specific technique offers 4 different categories where you can put each of those risks. So here you prioritize the risks by the graph, and then one by one you need to discuss in which of these 4 categories we can put this risk. So can we avoid this risk? Can we replan the release so the risk never occurs, or can we replan something else so we can avoid this risk? If yes, we categorize this risk here, and probably we need an action plan or an owner, someone to take care about that. The second category is transfer outside the risk to someone better able to address it. So do we know someone who too we can transfer this risk, and this person could take care to mitigate, to resolve the risk, or provide an action plan? The third one is accept. So sometimes we cannot avoid, we cannot transfer, we cannot mitigate. We just need to accept the risk. So recognize that we have done as much as we can do to address the risk. And if this risk occurs, we will face the consequences. There is nothing else that we can do at the moment. So we accept the risk, and it is clear and transparent for everyone. And the fourth category is mitigate. Replan the release to reduce the impact and probability of the risk. So here we can think from the perspective what kind of action plan we can have so this risk is mitigated. This is just one proposition, one exercise, one technique that you can use. It is called probability and impact matrix with these 4 different categories. But there are also other techniques. I mentioned that there are some scaled frameworks, or even if you're not using the scaled framework, you can steal some techniques from there, because we're just everyone from the Agile umbrella, and we're using techniques that we need and for us that are the most appropriate. And the roaming risk technique is exactly the same. We have again a list of all of the risks, but we have slightly different 4 categories, which are resolved, owned, accepted, and mitigated. But again, you see these accepted categories here again, because sometimes we cannot decide on a plan, or we cannot own the risk, or we cannot resolve it, but it's just, we take the risk. We start the development, and if it occurs, maybe we will replan the whole planning, or we'll see what to do, but we accepted it. So roaming risk is just another technique that you can be using. So if we were in a classroom, I would ask you who should manage the risk in Agile, because you can see in LinkedIn, in some websites that are offering jobs, that sometimes we see the position of a risk manager. Maybe they are specific people that are managing the risk, or in Agile, the answer is that here is everyone responsible for the risk, but maybe on the different levels. Of course, we have different people that have the ownership to resolve the risks. That's why it's important to use some techniques like the roaming or the risk probability and impact matrix, because when we categorize the risk in the different groups, we also put an owner who will take care of that. Of course, if we find a way how to avoid it, no need of owner. But if we need to transfer the risk to someone, we put an owner. Someone will take care of that. If we accept it, it's fine. But if we decide to mitigate it, maybe we need an owner who will polish and finalize the mitigation plan of this risk. So each risk is not just flying in the space, but it's owned by someone, and people are working to take care of that. And then the monitoring phase comes. If you remember from the 4 phases, we need to monitor the risks all the time. So when we have, for example, the collaborative planning events, we gather all of the teams together, they plan together because of some dependencies, and then maybe we need to put, it is just an idea now, to put in place a meeting where key people from the teams, maybe the Scrum Masters, they come and discuss with the other Scrum Masters how are the risks, if how they are progressing on them. But it is just an idea. You know that Scrum, Kanban, none of the frameworks give us exact direction for everything. They just give us the basic, they give us the frames, but inside it depends of the company, it depends of what we want to achieve and how we want to achieve it. We can put some practices in place. But some tips and tricks from my practice. I can tell you what happened latest. I hope we have 5 more minutes. I'm not sure. What's going on the planning? What we see on the planning events? Sometimes we are having these high-level plannings, and we were trying to plan 4 or 5 iterations for the different teams. They were trying to plan, not us, but we were trying to help them to plan 4 or 5 iterations. So we see that if they plan on 100% each iteration, doesn't give them any flexibility. Plus, we say that this is a high-level planning. So we did this exercise. First time, all of the teams, they planned on 100% of their capacity, and we saw that they cannot reach any predictability more than 70-75. Predictability is something that they deliver. What is the percentage of the things that they deliver against the things that they commit? So we see that they cannot reach the 100% delivery of what they promise if we do these high-level plannings for 4 or 5 iterations ahead, and because not all of the user stories are refined in details. The idea is not to refine in details 5 iterations ahead, because probably this is waterfall at the end again, but just to have a high-level idea and then refine in front of each iteration, in front of each sprint. You again have refinements, you again have a sprint planning, iteration planning, to refine completely what should be in the next iteration. So in this case, when you're doing high-level plannings, the recommendation from me is to use 80% of the capacity, to give this gap to the teams, to refine uncertainties, but have in mind that this is not a buffer for more functionalities. It's just a buffer for the uncertainties that they don't know at the moment for iteration 3 or 4, which will happen in 2 months. What else? Also, I was mentioning a few times transparency. So if you are doing high-level plannings, or even if your teams are not planning together, maybe it's a good idea to have something visual when there are dependencies between the teams. So this is something like a dependency board. We have the different iteration and the different teams, and on this board, we put only dependencies between the team. For example, the team 1 wants to deliver a functionality in iteration 3, and they are waiting for something from other teams from the previous 2 iterations. It is good to have this transparent board where you can see these dependencies, and on a regular basis to sync with Scrum Masters or with product owners, and to see if you have critical paths of delivery, if you have delays. So putting in place this transparency mitigates a lot of risking our delivery and putting delays in place. So transparency is really key. Effective prioritization. This is one of my favorite. It is, you know, it was this rule 80-20 that with 20% of our capacity, we're doing 80% of all of the business value that we're bringing to the customers, and just 80 with the other 80% of our capacity, we are doing small things that are not bringing so much customer value. Sometimes it's true. So we need to have in mind that we need to prioritize, because if we prioritize something which is not important for the customers, doesn't bring any business value, we're just spending our resources for nothing. So prioritization is number 1, to make sure that we are doing the most priority things every time, on a high level, on a management level, on a strategic level, to the team level. On all of the levels, prioritization is really important. And about the transparency, I talked about a lot, I think, but it is mentioned in the manifesto, it is mentioned in the Scrum, it is mentioned in extreme programming. So it is just they're mentioning us this transparency all the time. So we need to have in mind how we can use it to mitigate the risks, because we can adopt some practices from extreme programming or from Scrum or from something else. But transparency is in the beginning of everything. And just because I was talking most of the time about Scrum teams, I just wanted to mention for those of you that are working with Kanban teams, because not everything is Scrum, that one of the very important things for the Kanban teams is to limit the work in progress. It's really really important, because we want to push the work from left to right through the flow, and we don't want to be stuck in the development column with 10 tickets, but nothing goes to the done. That's why we need to put these work in progress limits, and really try to pull to pull the tickets through the system, so we can little by little put them in the column down without having us endless list on the previous columns. I'm mentioning Kanban here as well, because even if we are working with Scrum teams on a team level, maybe prioritization might happen on a Kanban level, on a Kanban board, or strategic teams. They could be also placed in a Kanban board. So even there, we can put some limits to mitigate the risks on how many things we are focusing our teams below. The definition of done, I mentioned it. You have this slide here. I told you before, it's really important to discuss it, because it introduces a lot of risk if we have different understanding what is done, what done means, and also for the release, what is the definition of done. I just give you here my recommendations, what would be nice if you put in the definition of done. But again, when I'm working with teams, I'm telling them that maybe this is the basics, maybe something is not relevant to you, you should discuss it, and then adapt it to your case. And because I will send you the presentation, you can practice the board that I was showing you, the tool I was showing you. It could be practiced with everything. I have a game here. It is the penny game that you can do with your teams, even online, because if you're not going at the office yet. So you can do the penny game online with large batch of coins. And then you can go into the next slide, which has mural, and you can see the graph there with probability and impact. And you can practice how you can discuss the sticky notes, the risks against the penny game. So it is just a proposition for you. Maybe you can practice it with your teams. Maybe some of you are facilitators or Scrum Masters and looking for new ideas, what to do with the teams, how to exercise maybe finding risks. So it is just a proposition for you. And this was the last slide. Thank you so much. And I maybe give the floor.
Okay, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Thank you, Diana. Thank you for a lovely presentation. How did you like it? You satisfied?
Yes.
Great.
Yes,
we
I
are as
am.
well.
It's a little bit hard when I cannot hear the people and see them, but I hope that it will be helpful for them to have everything on slides and maybe review them later.
Yeah, for sure. We will share everything, and they will have the opportunity to view your session again. They will have the video. So I have a question. If we can do that now, right?
Sure. Yeah. If we have time, of course.
Yeah, we have time. There is now after this we have a lunch break for 1 hour. So just a few minutes. We can spend it on this. You mentioned now prioritization on all levels. And I agree with you that it's really important to do that on each level. But as you know, it's maybe you can maybe you can stop sharing so we see you in full.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that's better. Okay, so it is challenging, of course, to do that exactly, especially on all levels, because sometimes we just get over our heads with daily tasks, with new things coming in. So sometimes we do prioritize things, and then all of a sudden we are doing everything out of order, and I don't know what. So how do you manage? Pusti samo bez. Sorry, we just had some technical. Yeah.
Yes.
So how do you manage to stay on the track, and how do you suggest people to stay on track and stay on everything that is needed when it comes to prioritization?
I couldn't hear the question. You were frozen.
Okay. Now okay?
But now it's fine. Yes.
Great.
It seems fine.
So how do you consult people and companies that you work with to stay on track with prioritization? Because it really happens to split easily off the track.
Yes, yes. Unfortunately, we see this everywhere, and it is one of the main topics that people are struggling to resolve, this prioritization and reprioritization in the middle of nothing. Yeah. I personally observe almost everywhere that, okay, now we have this beautiful planning, maybe we decide what we will do for the next 3 months, and then at the end of the first month, new priorities are coming.
Yeah.
So and then everybody are like, oh, why then we spent this so much time to have this high level planning for the next 3-4 months when we are changing the priorities again. It is a long process. If I will lie, if I say that it is easy, it is not. Because we as coaches, we need to work with the people on the different levels. That's why I mentioned different levels. Me, for example, I'm working with teams, but I'm also working with team of teams, with the management teams on the different levels. So it is not only to teach the team how to do the planning or coach them what is the meaning of this planning event for the next iteration, but it is also an effort to work with the management and how they can prioritize effectively and not change priorities quite often. Of course, uncertainties sometimes might happen, like COVID, you know, one day we were fine and we had our priorities for the next 6 months, and on the next day everything is COVID, and we need really to react on the environment because environment is flexible. But still, what we do, I can give you an example. At the moment, we are doing this high-level prioritization for the 3-4 months, and then every time when a priority change of priorities comes, we take a record and we discuss it. At the moment, if this new functionality is really a must, if there is something burning on production, what will be the business value? What is the reason to put this new functionality in the higher in the priorities? So teams, they need to start immediately for next week. And we do something like retrospective meetings if we see that this occurs quite often. But it is on a prioritization level. It is more on a management level to work with them, to have some workshops, to find the reasons why this comes. Sometimes maybe because it was not ready for the high level planning, they didn't have enough information, but then maybe we need to see what is exactly the definition of ready for these functionalities to be planned in the next few months. So there are many things that we can do, but we should work on the different levels of the company. It's not only the teams that we should work with.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion. Thank you. And you talked a lot about transparency. And I know that you are an enterprise consultant and coach. So would you like to and want to make a parallel between transparency that is shown in enterprise organizations and transparency in, I don't know, medium organizations? Because I don't have a lot of experience with enterprise organizations, so I would like to hear your opinion. How is that manageable in huge organizations?
So it is quite similar, if I have to be fair, because before I was working also with smaller companies. It is just lately that I am working in enterprise the last 2-3 years. But before that, I was working with smaller companies, and I see same pattern. They all really want to have visually the strategic teams, the big topics that the company, for example, the CEO of the company goes or the CEO of Google goes and says, yes, our strategic is security. So the really big topics, which are connected with smaller topics that might be for a few months, again, not so small, but small enough to plan them in H1, for example, and then to be connected with the small topics in the different iterations. So they want to have this visibility. And I see them using different approaches and different tools. So from Trello to Jira Kanban boards, Jira Align portfolio plugins. So they're really struggling to find the best way. And I see different tools everywhere, depending, of course, again, also of the budget, because, different things cost differently. Yeah, I see the high level prioritization really on Kanban boards. That's why I mentioned this small tip. Kanban boards are not only used for Kanban teams, they're used for prioritization as well. So even in them, we can put some limits in progress, because at the end, we cannot develop 100 things at once. We need to prioritize. And there is no 5 things for priority 1. It is just one thing for priority 1. Second thing is priority 2. There are no 5 things or 6 things priority number 1. We need to decide at the end.
Yeah, that's so, like every time. What is our priority? Well, all of that. Well,
this small list is our priority. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we all have tens of priorities. Yeah.
But it is, and the difference, of course, is that in enterprise, it's a bigger structure. You need more approvals, more people to attend. It's just a bigger organization, so the scale is bigger. But when you convince people somehow that agile is good thing, that this visibility, this transparency is good thing, you see them pushing in this direction, and they're really leading the change. They're finding tools, they're coming with ideas. So it is, yes, it is the same, but quite different. I don't know if you got it, but it's interesting in all of the levels.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much for joining us. I really liked your presentation, and I will watch it again definitely, because I really think it can help a lot of teams, and I can use it in my teams as well. It's really nice for you to joining the Regional Scrum Gathering, and I hope that we will have the opportunity to meet in person on some event like this. I hope you had a nice time, and thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a nice day. Have a nice rest of conference.
You too. Bye.